Today is Thursday, March 29th, 2007. My name's Bill Hurd, along with John Litsky. We are interviewing for the Wilkes Oral History Project. And our interview at this hour is with Brenda Dobbins. Hi, Brenda.
Hi.
For the folks that are copying all of this down, let me spell the last name for you. D-O-B-B-I-N-S. Dobbins.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Hang on.
My degree from UNC Chapel Hill is in radio, television, motion pictures.
Okay, no wonder.
It's been a few years ago. RTVMP, as we call it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I worked in radio and TV and stuff like that for a lot of years. But thank you very much. I enjoy what I do. What's Lincoln Heights?
Lincoln Heights was the school built for for the black students.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to Lincoln Heights being built, there were small schools, mainly in churches and in small buildings around the county. And in 1922, 23, the parents wanted to build a school where the students could continue their education. They had fish fries and chicken queues, and they sold their vegetables out of their garden in order to build a school. Rosenwald, and
Joe Rosenwald?
now I'm not sure what his first name is. I've just drawn a blank. But he was president of Sears. What happened was Booker T. Washington, that was with Tuskegee Institute, went to talk to him to get a grant for Tuskegee. And he would not give him any money until he ventured south to see what the conditions were. And he was astonished at the conditions of the schools for the black students. So he gave him some money for Tuskegee, and then he challenged all the black families and the communities that if they would raise money, he would match it. And it's amazing when you get into the history of it, because he had the blueprints drawn for the schools. There was no electricity at the time. So if you look at the building, you see these tall windows, but they're always on the, south side or the north side. Which side would you say they were on, Jay?
No.
Where the sun and the chalkboards are, or the sun would hit the chalkboards.
I would say south.
Okay.
I would
Say the south side.
East, morning to afternoon, arc of the sun, most times of the year, would give you a southerly exposure.
Well, he had it all designed. The windows are tremendous. Now, they've been cut down because we've used it since we've closed it for different occasions and to make it more efficient. But it was his design, and you'll find that there's schools all over the South that he helped build.
Wow. And I think the tall windows probably would have helped with ventilation as well.
Right, right.
And you get some airflow as well.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Now,
he even drew the blueprints up for the outhouses. And he built them where it would be a school, but also a community center. Ours is in the shape of an H. One of the board members, when he saw it, he says, well, we will have our students would have we're supposed to reach the heights of Lincoln.
okay,
So that's how we got the name Lincoln Heights.
I see. That was going to be one of my next questions.
Okay.
How the name came about.
Mm-hmm.
The school was in the shape of an H,
Mhm.
so you're reaching the heights.
Of Lincoln.
And Lincoln,
Mhm.
President Lincoln,
Right.
Emancipation Proclamation, this kind of thing. In 1922 or so, you say that's when the school...
And that's what I imagine, because it was opened in 1924. So I figure it probably took them more than 2 years to build the school. It was actually built with a large auditorium and 3 classrooms on each end of the auditorium. One classroom was actually where they could expand it, and now the partition is out with it. And then we had a stage.
So blueprints, school designs were available.
Well, they were used for all the schools. When you look at the schools that were across the South, they basically all look the same.
But the money had to come from the local community.
The local, right, citizens. And then he matched it.
Wow. Excellent, excellent. And so that was the beginnings of the school here in Wilkes
Of the
County.
consolidation of all the schools for the black students.
How did you find teachers?
Our teachers came from everywhere. Salisbury, Winston-Salem, New York, Washington, D.C., from all, I mean, it's amazing because the teachers that we had were mainly North Carolina teachers when I went through, but the teachers in the earlier schools were from all over the North and the South.
Was Wilkes County ahead of other counties in what it was able to do? Was this a progressive county in that regard?
I would say so because students from Ashe County, Yadkin County, and even Allegheny County traveled to Lincoln Heights to get their high school education.
Okay. I would think that this was probably a place easier to get to from the major cities than the places you have just described, which from here, from Wilkesboro to Boone, before the advent of the modern roads, was a couple of days.
Right.
So if they came down here, they had access because there were better ways to get to Wilkes County.
Well, there were elementary schools there. Even I graduated from Lincoln Heights in '66, and students were coming from Allegheny and from 62 to 65 going to Lincoln Heights with us for the high school.
I grew up in Reidsville, North Carolina,
Okay.
and attended Reidsville Senior High School. And across town was Booker T. Washington Senior High School.
Okay.
And in 1969, the year I graduated, the schools were consolidated. What happened here in Wilkes County in that period of time?
In 65, 66, they integrated the schools. That was my senior year in high school.
And what happened to Lincoln Heights then?
Well, the high school operated for one more year. In 67, they closed the high school. The elementary teachers moved down to the high school. And in 68, they closed the elementary school.
Okay.
And then they made it a career center. And the old part, the elementary part, was daycare. But see, Lincoln Heights, the old building, it's got 2 additions to it. But it was actually 1 through 12 when I started in '56.
So you started school there, and you went all the way through.
Yes. But I mean, everybody was up in that one building.
Okay.
Somewhere in the 60s, the early 60s, they built the high school.
Central.
And then where the career center is now.
Okay.
There.
High school for Lincoln Heights.
Right.
Okay.
They built the high school. My husband graduated in '62, and the gym wasn't finished, so he graduated in the auditorium of the old building. The gym was finished so that we could use it in '62, '63. Prior to that, we had an old gym that looked like a barn. It was built in 1939, and we actually have pictures of it as it was being built.
Wow. How many students, on average, would attend at Lincoln Heights during the years it was operating?
My guess, we had about 200 to 250, 1 through 12 every year. And now some years we may have had more, but that's just roughly my guess.
And so they would be from when you started first grade would be about age 6 or age 7.
Right.
All the way up to graduating high school would put you in your late.
And we all rode the same bus. The older ones looked out for the little ones.
This is interesting, huh? A school created by a community. So everybody had a stake in this organization.
Right.
When it came time for group get-togethers where you talk about curriculum and PTAs and things, or whatever they were called back then, was there a good turnout?
Yes. Very good. There was always a program for the PTA. Some class always performed, and then we had our PTA meetings.
So the curriculum was very varied. That you talked about performance. When you say performance, I think of dance, I think of theater, I think of music.
Right. Some type of play or something. Well, it was outlined in the beginning, and everybody knew when the PTA meetings were going to be, and then who was responsible for the entertainment during that time.
Mm-hmm. I was in the marching band in high school, and we were pretty good, but we were never anywhere close to being as good as Booker T. Washington.
Now, we used to have large parades, and I'll show you pictures of the parades. I mean, and the guys drove the tractors, and we had beautiful floats that we had worked on. And it's amazing. I was from Roaring River, so I rode the bus to school and bus home. We had in high school a 20-minute activity period after lunch where we could join clubs and so forth and participate throughout the week. But basically, those of us that lived in the outlying areas, when school was over, you got the bus and you rode home. But it didn't leave us, I mean, as far as sports were concerned, my youngest brother participated in basketball. He was a senior my freshman year, so I thought, well, I'll get to play 1 year, but my mom says no. With it, but it didn't bother us with being on the outlying areas, except that we couldn't participate in activities in the evenings and at night.
Just simply took too long to get home.
Right. Mm-hmm. But we had the parades now. We could put on the parades, and then we always had May Day. We had May Day activities where we had platinum maypole and the dances and so forth. That was a big deal for us. It was a fundraiser, but it was a big deal. And we had a Sweethearts Ball every year. I was president of the New Homemakers of America. And we had a mother-daughter, father-son banquet every year. We called it a cotton ball. We had a little dance with cotton balls. So that was a special effort our parents had to get us back to school.
That sounds a lot different from what we see today with schools.
Oh, yeah.
It sounded like you really had a good thing going.
Well, we had a family affair. We knew everybody. You knew everybody in Wilkes County, grandmother, grandfather, down to the babies. And now you just don't know that. One of the things that came out when we were talking about consolidating North and East was, I said, well, give them some lunch period, because we used to we'd eat our lunch and then we'd have our time to socialize together. But they don't do that anymore. There's, we're strictly curriculum, but I think the time to spend, we got to know each other during that lunchtime, activity period time.
Who among the folks you went to school with went on to do other things? And what memories do you have about the different career tracks and things like that?
Well, a lot of us went into teaching. But we have doctors and lawyers and secretaries.
How about military?
Oh, a lot of them in the military. In fact, a lot of in the earlier years, they went into the military and then came back and finished high school.
Okay.
That was mainly in the 40s that I discovered that.
Second World War.
Probably. Mm-hmm.
The gentleman that we talked to this morning was in the Second World War. and he went over to France and fought on the front lines
Okay.
and was injured. Very touching story about what was going on there. Different times. Of course, we have wars today, but the conflicts now are different, not only in size and scope but in feel, as to the reasons why, what's going on. But that's a different interview. The school was closed,
In 1968.
but the facility, the building itself, still had a lot of good use in it.
Yes, they used it as the Career Center used it part of the time. And then they put a daycare in it. And then they closed the daycare, and it sat for a few years, and they were really just discussing tearing it down. My sixth grade teacher, who actually, I think, started Lincoln Heights when it opened, started as a student, Elizabeth Grinton. She graduated from Lincoln Heights and then came back and spent a majority of her career at Lincoln Heights teaching. Fought for us to save our building. She got her group together and went before the county commissioners, and they didn't destroy our building.
So it's 2007. The building is still in use today.
Yes.
What's the future for the building?
We're hoping to really make it more of a community center, to have training classes. Jane Wilbur and I have done some tutoring, and then she got into a special program with it, and just to make it for the community, to leave it like it originally was for the community, for activities.
Is the building, the physical structure itself, still in good condition?
You know what people tell us? It's built better than most of the new buildings today. People have gone, and I've been down underneath in the basement, and people are just amazed. Some of the men that have gone down there, and that structure is that sturdy.
Good set of plans to start with, and good materials and workmanship going into it.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. You mentioned before we started the interview that your plans originally were to go to the big city.
Yes, it was.
But you stayed in Wilkes County.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you change your plans?
My husband wouldn't move.
Well, that's the short answer, but
Well, I came to East only to get some experience. Everywhere in 1970, when I finished A&T, everywhere I went for a job interview, they wanted somebody with experience. I don't think they thought I could handle the high school students. And they kept, we were looking for someone with experience. So I spent a summer working at North Carolina National Bank. I went to Philadelphia, where the majority of my family is, and worked a couple of jobs there. I was a receptionist for North City Congress, and then I got a job at GE as a secretary. But they laid me off, and I came back to North Carolina. And then I worked at A&T in the bookstore as a secretary for 6 months until I finally got my foot in the door here at Wilkes County. I worked a year as a technical aide at East Wilkes. And then I got my teaching. I was able to move into the teaching position that I stayed for 28 more years.
28 more.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all have reunions. Lincoln Heights reunions. Don't
Every 2 years.
Tell me about what kind of affairs are those?
We have a program on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, a school assembly. Generally, we have it in the Career Center gym. And then what we do is we have exhibits set up in our building, because we do the veteran exhibit in one room. We have a Elizabeth Grinton gallery. And we actually have the slide presentation that Elizabeth did to the county commissioners to convince them not to tear down our building, to leave it. So we did have the slide presentation, and then we just let them tour the building. We have food for them, and just kind of have activities for them throughout the day. The guys bring their cars, and we have a car show. And somewhere around 2 or 3 o'clock, everybody's worn out. So then they go home, and then at 7 o'clock, we usually do some type of Motown review, but we have our own performers that do their...
What I have gotten throughout this entire interview process is this feeling of community, of interactivity, of just absolute life, its own self going on in this facility, and has been for 70, 80 years.
Right.
Why? What has made
Well, what is so fascinating about our first reunion, it rained. Cats and dogs. It poured. It was in 1978, I want to say, but I'm not sure. But everybody, the gym was full of people. A lot of out-of-towners come back in for our school reunion. They just want the companionship and to see everybody again.
I don't have the same strong feelings about the school that I graduated from in Reedsville. I've never gone back to a high school reunion because I've never felt drawn to it. But you're talking about folks that come from long distances. And
well, they come from California and Pennsylvania and D.C. and the South. I mean, we have more, sometimes more in proportion, out-of-towners coming back in than we have local people. Some of the local people, they just kind of say, well, that's Lincoln Heights. But the ones, and we're losing a lot, because you look at it in 68, a lot of those are in their 50s and getting on up. But what we're wanting to do is bring the young people in so that they can appreciate it. Now, I have people that say, I went to daycare there. And when they do, and I'll tell them, well, that's where I graduated, and they're just amazed at it.
Well, there's definitely a sense of history here, a sense of something special that has gone on. It's a wonderful story.
Well, I wish Elizabeth Grinton was here so she could share it, and she could really give you all the details of it.
Well, Brenda, in closing, have I asked all the questions that I should have asked? Is there any aspect of what y'all have done that I have missed? Anything you'd like to add?
No.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Because we are doing a chapter on eastern Wilkes County.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say that you grew up in Roaring River?
Yes.
Could you give us a little bit of background and your perspective maybe on that town growing up as a child?
Now?
That's okay. I mean, we're kind of...
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You've got me hooked. So. Now, this is interesting. Roaring River is really still a small community. Now, I live, as my sister says, in the outskirts of it, because I live what used to be 421. Mm-hmm. But I live right off 268, above Roaring River School. We were integrated to the point that we worked together. I mean, some of my best friends